Hi, are you a man that's having a hard time getting erections? Are you wondering why it is that your erections aren't as hard as they were when you're in your 20s? Or are you even in your 20s and wondering what's going on with premature ejaculation or erectile dysfunction? Well,
If so, welcome to tonight's version of Naked Talk. Tonight we're going to be talking about men's sexual health. I'm Elizabeth Wood
and I'm Dan Powers.
with Beyond the Bedroom. Naked Talk is where we get naked in a conversation of sexuality, intimacy, and relationship. We strip down and expose the bare facts so that you can learn what it takes for your love to thrive. So, men's sexual health.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
Well, men's sexual health covers a lot of different topics, and our last Naked Talk was on women's sexual health. So this time we thought we'd balance it out a little bit and talk about men's sexual health. And there's all sorts of things, like we alluded to in the questions at the beginning. There's erectile dysfunction, there's aging when it comes to sexuality, and there's premature ejaculation. Those are probably the three big ones. Maybe even prostate health as well, and how that impacts our sexual health as men. That's probably the four that I can think of that are big.
So what Dan was actually talking about were physiological, medical conditions, and that's one of the things that we tend to focus on with men's sexual health. It's a little bit different than what the components are when a physician or a counselor or therapist is sitting in front of a female client, and I think that's a really interesting point, because so often there's that little blue pill or there's some kind of injection or something that's going to alleviate the physical symptoms of sexual dysfunction. So what we would like to do is also include the emotional part, which we talked about with the women in that segment, and the relationship health, which we also talked about as part of the components of who a woman is at her sexual core. So I think that's really key. And Dan didn't know I was going to go there, but that's what.
But that's why this is Naked Talk. We just open it up and talk.
Yeah, the physicians go there to find like a medical concern that's afflicting the men, and Dan's absolutely right. There's it's erectile difficulty, whether it's ejaculating before you're ready. It used to be called erectile dysfunction.
Well, ED's not being able to get an erection.
Right. It used to be called
Premature ejaculation.
Premature ejaculation, and it's actually called early ejaculation.
Well, we call it early ejaculation because how's it really premature? I mean, if you're ejaculating, that's great. And there's actually an issue where women think that men are prematurely ejaculating because they haven't actually reached their sexual arousal or the height of their sexual arousal. And so for them, yeah, it's a little premature, but in reality for men, it's earlier than they really wanted to necessarily.
Right. So that's really ejaculating. That ejaculatory inevitability, clinical term, happens before the couple or the man wants it to happen. And let's kind of refer back to that timing issue. So for a man, self-stimulation alone from the normal state of his everyday being to the point of climax is
like 2 to 3 minutes.
2.4 minutes on average. And Dan also alluded to aging. The aging process is going to extend that just a slight little bit. Then the timing for ejaculation with a partner, for the men, it only increases by a couple minutes. So from 2.4 when during solo play, it bumps up to about 4 to 5 minutes if there's active penetration. For women, on the other hand, the timing is much longer. Our solo play, it can be in our 20s, about 10 minutes before we reach before we reach climax. And that's solo play. It extends almost double that amount of time when we're in partnered play. So that, I think, is really helpful to share with the audience, that what's premature about that? The guy is just functioning in his normal biological state, and so are we as women. Very small, we call the men the microwaves, and longer for the women that we affectionately call the slow cookers. So I think that's a really important fact, naked fact, to give our audience, because that's a massive timing difference that the couple needs to negotiate.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the chief complaints that I've heard from women, throughout my life, let alone my career as a sexual educator, is there's no foreplay. In fact, that's one of the big jokes in the United States, is how little foreplay there really is in our sexual encounters. And so men, one of the things that we really want you to start looking into is how can you bounce back and forth. So as you start to say, get on a scale of 1 to 10, closer to that ejaculatory inevitability, so say like the 7 or 8, whereas 9 is the ejaculatory inevitability and 10 is actually ejaculation, start to back it off. You get to that point and then move on to doing something else where you're stimulating your partner, kissing her a little bit more, you may be providing oral sex for her, or even just vulva massage. And, obviously we should talk about the earlier part, which is just full body massage, caressing the entire body. That's something that we don't do very often in our sexual education or our sexual world here because of lack of sex education.
So back to that term dysfunction. Sexual dysfunction is, of course, a medical term. And yes, there are things that the little blue pill definitely will fix. It was actually designed for something else, and they found that one of the side effects of Viagra and now Cialis and all the others is that men were obtaining and sustaining these longer erections. So they knew that they'd come into a windfall, and it's now used as to help men who have serious issues with let's see. So prostate cancer or prostate health is a big contributor to a man's ability to obtain an erection.
Right. So there's physiological reasons as well as psychological reasons. And the physiological reasons are really what Viagra and the like are designed for. And I've read the statistic somewhere that said that only 10% of people who are prescribed Viagra really need it for physiological reasons. The other side of it is psychological reasons. And there's a number of reasons for that. As we get older, we start to think that we need to get the erections that we had when we were 20 and we don't. So then we start putting pressure on ourselves to get the erection. And what happens when you get a lot of stress on you? Your erections go away. So that's one reason that Viagra can be used for psychological purposes. Really what we like to do is teach people that you don't need that pill. You just need to learn to relax and enjoy that journey and just have fun with what it is you have. Even if it's just a soft on, feel free to enjoy that as well.
Right. And we're not going to dismiss the medical concerns because if a man has had his prostate removed, remember Bob Dole, those of you that are old enough to remember Bob Dole, he had his prostate removed and he was a spokesperson for a number of years for Viagra.
After he lost the election.
Yeah, right. That is a valid use for Viagra, and so
are some of the
valid
uses.
You're right. They're the psychological components. I didn't mean to dismiss those. Anxiety is a huge reason, especially in new relationships. The men are so anxious that they're not going to perform like their new partner's former partner or partners, and so they put a lot of pressure to have that same erection that they had when they were 20. It's not going to happen if you're 50, but a lot of Viagra is prescribed for the very first part of new relationships. Well, again, as sex educators, there are other ways to help alleviate that anxiety. If you need the little blue pill, we're not going to tell you no if it's for a valid reason, but just to get that erection that you thought you were going to have, it's not really part of your natural flow if you're 50, 60. We do have to caution Viagra. There are physical symptoms that are contraindicated in terms of use of Viagra. If you have blood pressure issues, if you have diabetes, if you have things wrong with your heart disease,
Yeah.
You're not actually a candidate for Viagra. That's why we always ask our clients to make sure they've seen their medical doctor to get the clearance if they do in fact need Viagra.
Right. And so the reason for that is, it's a precursor to heart disease. It's an indicator of heart disease because as the arteries are starting to harden, that's actually how an erection happens. Let me rephrase that. Erections happen when blood flows into the penis and the veins have actually collapsed purposely, and they're blocking the flow of blood. So as blood starts to flow in through the arteries into the penis, that's when it starts to expand and fill up with that blood. In the case of heart disease, you've got a hardening of the arteries in the veins, I believe, and you've got I forget what the layer is inside of the tubes themselves, but anyway, it's starting to harden, and because of that, the penis isn't able to form an erection because
erection.
Right, because that blood is flowing through more freely, and the arteries, veins aren't able to be as elastic as they're supposed to be.
Yeah, so that's a great, I mean, if you have known or have seen over the years a loss of your erection that's not due to normal aging, you are going to want to have that checked out by your medical doc, because as Dan said, that is an potential indicator of something that may be going on with your heart.
Yep. Another reason, especially in the 20-year-olds, wasn't there a statistic you found recently that said that right now we've got the highest population of 20 to 30-year-olds that are having erectile dysfunction issues, and so they're having to use Viagra. What's the reason for that?
There's so much porn use, actually, that's out there in that demographic. The hard and fast and super duper potent stimulation just actually isn't happening in their real life relationships. So when these young men, 20 to 30, go and enter into a real relationship, they're not being stimulated the same way that they are in that fast and hardcore porn. Yeah. So sex therapists and docs and physical or PAs are treating more and more of the younger population who have some type of sexual dysfunction.
ED type issues.
ED, yeah. Absolutely.
Well, and I think there's multiple reasons for this. I mean, it's multifaceted. One is we watch porn, and real life just cannot match porn, because porn
it's not meant to.
Right. It's meant for entertainment, for one. But second of all, they take cuts. So when you see a person having intercourse on porn, they may be having intercourse for a minute or two or whatever it might be, but then they'll stop and then they'll do something else, move to another position, and they'll have a different camera angle. So when they're having sex for, say, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, hard, fast, jackhammer intercourse, that's not realistic. Mm-hmm. And so that's one thing. And then two, when we masturbate, because our society is so down on masturbation, typically, I think it's starting to change now because people like us, but because masturbation is so looked down upon, we don't want to get caught. So we look around really quickly, and then we do our thing as quickly as possible.
And in secret.
Right. And so what we've done is we've trained ourselves to come as quickly as possible. So then you add that now when I get into a relationship with a woman, I'm trained to get it over with as quickly as possible. And that just really isn't going to be helpful for all of us, because we should really enjoy it.
Slow and luxurious and take your time. Remember, for a woman to reach her full state of arousal, we're going on 20, 30, 40 minutes to reach full arousal. So that timing difference is why many couples may be going into sex therapists complaining of ED or erectile issues. Dan and I definitely want to talk about prostate health, because that's another thing, sort of that taboo area. Anything inside of the anus tends to be taboo. Doctors don't regularly check for prostate health. Actually,
until you become 50.
Until you become 50. But prostate health is, pretty important to women have prostates as well, to men and women.
I've read something recently that said that all men, if we lived long enough, would die of prostate cancer, because we have that there, and it just hasn't grown, something, I don't know if it's gotten surrounded by other cells, so it hasn't actually been able to expand a lot of times. But eventually that will break free, and we will all eventually die of prostate cancer if we live long enough.
If you live long enough. I think we'll all die of some form of cancer if we live long enough, the way that, we're eating and the way we don't take care of ourselves.
Yeah, but I think the idea was that we actually have it in our bodies. Like supposedly I have the prostate cancer cells in my prostate right now. It just hasn't done anything, and I get tested regularly, so it hasn't shown up yet. But it's definitely something you want to keep an eye on.
And Dan's internist, he regularly at his annual exams gets checked. His prostate is checked. A lot of doctors.
My doctor still won't give me a kiss either.
Oh, yeah, he asks no. Okay, so I lost my train of thought there with that kiss. Okay, and it's a male doctor. Okay, so back to, fewer and fewer people are actually going in for their annual exams. The prostate check for a man is part of a routine annual physical. But what happens in our youth, in our society that actually thinks it's so young, thinks that it's impervious to anything going on, the young men are not getting checked. So it goes unchecked. Really, right, it goes unchecked for years and years and years. It was a long time before I really remembered to go in and take care of myself on an annual basis. So it should be part of your regular annual exam. So all of you men, don't be timid, ask for it if your doctor at that regular annual isn't providing it for you. It's part of that check.
And ask your doctor, because when I was younger, I asked if I needed to have it done, and I did once when I was 30, something like that, maybe again once when I was 40, but the doctor generally said, no, with my state of health and what's going on with my body and blood tests, I really didn't need to get it tested. But,
get it checked. Yeah, because there are blood tests out there that will also measure prostate health, and that's a good thing to have and ask for when you're going in for any other type of blood testing. So there's also, talking about blood testing, there's also the issue of decreasing testosterone in a man's body. Testosterone naturally decreases as you men age.
Starting at 30, I think, is what I read.
Yeah, so that is part of your healthy sexual functioning. We live in the state of Colorado, where now marijuana use is legal. Marijuana use, constant and regular marijuana use, has been shown to decrease the amounts of testosterone in a man's body. So just know that if you're an avid pot smoker and you enjoy it, it's going to wreak havoc on the free-flowing testosterone. That might be something that you want to have checked. The baseline, same for us women, the baseline with our hormone levels should be taken when we're in our mid-20s to get a baseline. Because now, in my 50s, when I'm having my hormones checked, I don't have that baseline to go back to. So that's another thing around men's sexual health. That's a really good tip. Next time you go for blood work, ask your doctor to put in and check your testosterone levels just so that you have that baseline.
But be careful, because I've had nurse practitioners, female especially, tell me, no, you really don't need to get that done. It's not very valuable. And that's absolutely incorrect. I've got another friend who's a urologist. There's actually 3 things that they need to look for. And unfortunately, I can't remember one of them. But one is total testosterone in the blood. The other is the testosterone uptake. How much is actually being used in your body? Because you could have a lot of testosterone, but if your body's not really absorbing it the way it's supposed to, then it doesn't matter. So you've got to have at least those 2. And there's one other, and I can't ever remember what it is.
I think it's the free testosterone. Do you think? So look that up. Google that up.
Even some of the doctors don't know, because I've asked a number of doctors, and they just aren't aware of it. So I've got to get that information from that.
Well, maybe Dan will put it on the website. So, but just you can Google to find out appropriate testosterone testing for general overall sexual health.
The other thing I was going to say about that is you absolutely want to get that baseline, because I might have a boatload of testosterone in my body right now, but it may not be being absorbed or whatever, but that may be normal for me. And 10 years ago or 20 years ago, it may have been about the same. So if you don't have a baseline and start to understand what's going on and start to notice that your sex drive actually may be down, then that's the time when you need to have the baseline and understand, what's the impact to me losing this arousal or not. I mean, it could be something like stress related. You're super busy, you've got a lot of things going on. That does decrease our sexual arousal.
Mm-hmm. So that's Dan was bringing in some of the emotional or psychological components. Stress. The more stress you have, the less testosterone. It's the same for both men and women, not in terms of testosterone, but the more stress we have in our lives, the less we're gonna, be really attached, if you will, to our libido. We're not really going to feel it running. So the psychological components are really important to also talk about in men. If you're depressed, if you're suffering from, suffering through like a tremendous crisis in your lives, your sex drive is going to decrease. So we need to pay attention to what's going on in the man's life in terms of his overall emotional and mental well-being. Perhaps something situational happened. He just got fired, or his dog just passed away. Who knows? There may be something emotionally stressing him, depleting him of energy. We also want to look at what's going on, just like the women, in their relationship. If their wife is one of those, or their partner is one of those who travels constantly, and it's kind of like they fight when they walk out the door, they fight when we walk in the door, what's the state of their relationship health? That's going to impact a man at his sexual core just as much as it is a woman, but we don't look typically. Sex therapists and medical docs don't typically, sex therapists do more so, but the medical docs don't necessarily take a holistic approach. Perhaps that man, young man or older man, has a problem smoking too much marijuana, is using illegal substances, or is he drinking too much. All of those are going to wreak havoc with his ability to feel that arousal and, to really be in control, if you will, of his sex drive and feel that sexiness. So all of those components. Is he suffering? We talked about the medical issues. He's suffering from high blood pressure. All of those things make, if you will, a more well-rounded approach to attacking an issue or addressing an issue that a man may be feeling. And I definitely wanted to bring that up because of course, we go there with the women first. But it's equally as important to look at all of those aspects for the men.
Yep. And that's something, going back to the Viagra side of things, is people think, oh, I'm instantly going to become more aroused when I get Viagra. And the fact is, you have to be aroused in order for Viagra to start to work. So when you become aroused is when you start, things start to happen for you to get or calling forth an erection. And if you're not actually getting aroused, the Viagra is just simply not going to work. You have to be able to start the thought process of that erection. So that's something to be cautious about as well.
Just because you have an erection, that doesn't mean it's going to eradicate the fact that your relationship really needs to be addressed. Your relationship issues need to be addressed, because the emotional well-being, of course, then that's the trickle-down effect, is going to impact the physical well-being or the physical aspect of the relationship. So we have, when Viagra was first introduced, there were all of these older women who kind of their sexual life had come to its peak and was now ebbing. And their husbands and partners were going out and getting the little blue pill, and they weren't prepared for the onslaught of erections. They had to go back and sort of mend and heal any relationship woes in order for their sex life to kind of come back on track. It doesn't happen so much anymore because it's now, 30-year anniversary of Viagra? Who knows? It's been around long enough that there aren't a lot of the older women who are screeching when the blue pill is first introduced. Maybe there are. So anyway, we talked about prostate health. We talked about emotional. What else do we have going on with men's sexual health?
I can't think of anything else. And there's a lot, really, it's out there. We're just touching on the high points, really, of things that are out there. But I think we've covered most of them. 20-year-olds and erectile dysfunction issues there, premature ejaculation, which we really are calling early ejaculation, I guess the one final thing that I would like to say is, as men, we are so used to getting it in, getting hard, getting it in, coming, and being done. And a lot of people talk to me about being frustrated when I talk to them about taking time to start enjoying the journey. We don't have to actually have an ejaculation. In fact, we don't have to have an ejaculation every time that we have intercourse. And this is a lesson that I learned the hard way, because in a former relationship, before I had any kind of education, I told her, it's like, if you touch me, then you need to finish me. Well, she said, okay, I'm just not going to touch you. Gee, that was pretty stupid of me. Yeah. And then I learned to start enjoying that journey. So I didn't just focus on my genitals. I didn't just focus on that goal of coming, because that goal as journey not only takes the stress and pressure away from us to get there, but it absolutely has us become more close with our partners, enjoy the sensation throughout our bodies. And this is one of the things that we talk to our couples about as well, is really getting back to the sensation, the touch, the connection that's created through intercourse, and all of that. So really, really want to stress, not to try to stress you out, but that enjoy that journey.
Yeah, it's not all about intercourse. There's a fun word called outer course. Explore the entire body. Explore a soft on. I'm going to end with this. Here in the West, we're so driven to succeed, and that there's almost this thought that I'm not a man if I can't get a firm, hard erection. Do you know how much pleasure the male body experiences with a soft on? That's obviously not a full hard on erection. So play with that, explore that. It will make you a more and better, a more well-rounded lover. There's so many tools. Penetration alone isn't just the only thing. So my last word would be explore, enjoy, take your time, and discover. Be adventurers out there, first with yourself, so that you know and can have mastery over your own sexual capacity, and then introduce it to your partner. It'll make the journey a lot more fun.
Yeah. So look forward to becoming a master lover through some of these tips, and how to not only enjoy it for yourself, but to provide a lot of pleasure for your partner too.
Yeah. So if there are any questions, please submit them to us so that we can address specific concerns or topics that we didn't cover in this brief half-hour period. There's always more. So that about wraps up tonight's version of Naked Talk. We want to thank you for being such an important part of this potent conversation. So shall we say good night?
Good night.
Thank you.